So I explain the why. So when I say, hey, I don't like this report, these reports don't match, let's get them looking right, let's get them fixed up here. I explain why, because, and I say, look, I'm not a latent examiner. So when I read these, they're a bit confusing, especially because you have one report that sounds this way, and you have one report that sounds this way. I know they're saying the same thing, but our deputies, our detectives, and even some of our state attorneys won't know that. So I give them the why. This is why I'm changing it. This is why I don't like it. This is why I want to change it to this. And I think that helps them accept, like, okay, he doesn't just think like, well, this is stupid, move on, we're doing it my way. I'm going to explain to you my reasoning for the change, and I think that helps them absorb it a little bit better.
Hey there, my name's Ashley Church.
And I'm Erin West.
We were once newly promoted crime scene and latent print supervisors on mutual struggle buses as we both simultaneously tried to navigate through the challenges within our forensic units.
Now we run a business where we create tools and resources that we wish we had had to make these transitions easier. We like to talk about the experiences we've had in the forensic field, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in the hopes to create awareness around these issues and move the needle forward to create positive change in the forensic community.
So if you're a forensic professional, regardless of your years of experience, who's not afraid to dive into real, raw, and sometimes uncomfortable topics, you're in the right place.
This is the Forensics Unfiltered podcast.
Welcome back. Settle on in because we are about to get into another episode of Forensics Unfiltered. This is the second episode of our countdown series to our Forensics on a Budget Summit. To get you excited for the Forensics on a Budget Summit happening this September during National Forensic Science Week, we will be featuring interview-style presentations from last year's summit. Now, if you missed the first episode, just go back one episode and listen to that. It's with Coach Lisa about using your leverage. Then join us for this one so you're all caught up, because today we're going to talk with Chris Decker about how to supervise beyond your specialty. Often when you get promoted, you're not just supervising one forensic unit, you're likely supervising multiple disciplines. Some you may be unfamiliar with or know nothing about. And if you love these presentations from last year's summit, I just want to remind you the replays are available in the All Access Pass, as well as inside of the vaults where you can get started for just $29. I'll include the links in the show notes for you. Okay, let's get into it. Before we start this episode, our guests would like to share a disclaimer that the opinions shared are their own and not representative of their current or past employment. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Forensic Supervisor Success Summit. This is our next session and we are very excited to have our next speaker here with us, Mr. Chris Decker. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you here as well. So today we're going to dive into the topic of how you can kind of get up to speed with units that you've not actually worked in before. It can be quite a challenge. Both Chris and I have had to deal with that. So we're going to share some of our thoughts with you guys today. But before we dive into the topic, if you will take a minute to introduce yourself to everyone that's here with us today.
As you stated before, my name is Chris Decker. I am the Forensic Laboratory Supervisor at the Marion County Sheriff's Office in Ocala, Florida. I've been here for 12 years total at the agency, spending most of my time in the DNA screening lab. And then I spent about a year and a half in our firearms NIVN lab before being promoted to the Forensic Lab Supervisor. As the Forensic Lab Supervisor, I am in charge of the DNA screening lab, the firearms lab, as well as our latent fingerprint unit, which is the unit I have no experience in. Other than that, I've got a bachelor's degree in biology, 2 kids, ages 2 and 7 months old. I am learning as I go.
They're little. You got some little ones.
Yeah, they take a lot of energy.
I love that. All right. So Chris mentioned that he absorbed a latent print unit and he's not super familiar with latents. I have kind of a similar background where I was a crime scene investigator, a latent print examiner. Currently, I am a crime scene manager. So I oversee our forensic unit, our latent print unit. And I recently received, about 2 years ago, I got our evidence unit, which I never worked in an evidence unit, didn't know anything about it. And about like a month ago, I got all of our body worn cameras. So I got our digital evidence unit with all of the body worn cameras and all of that. So those are my units, my evidence and digital evidence unit that I was super unfamiliar with, and he's got latent. So we're going to dive into kind of talking about those today. And we'd love for you guys to drop in the chat box if any of you are in a similar situation or have been in a similar situation where you got a unit that you were super unfamiliar with, because that's obviously what we're going to dive into. So as someone that got assigned to supervise a unit that you didn't personally work in, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that you encountered when that happened?
I mean, I feel like it's a given, but essentially you don't know anything. I was unaware of their workflow. I was unaware of the things that they had to get done every day. I was unaware of the process for not only evaluating prints, but entering prints into APHIS and comparing them to getting them verified. I was familiar with none of their workflow. I worked alongside of them for years. The latent unit's part of the forensic unit. Everybody that works in there is my friend, but the biggest issue was I didn't even know if they were doing their job correctly, if they were doing it thoroughly, and if they weren't, how to fix it. So I was on a crash course in latent print examination or still am really, for the past 4 months.
I love that for you.
Yeah.
I will say too, something that you said really strikes a chord with me, because some supervisors will get a unit and they'll just be like, well, everything seems to be going well, so I'm just going to let it ride. And they're not really going to invest that much time into learning like the details about how the unit functions. But something he mentioned is you don't know that they're doing it right if you don't know what they're doing. So you have to get in there and learn it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
So
another thing that you mentioned is that you worked alongside that unit for many, many years. And I felt a very similar way about the evidence unit, that I worked alongside of them. I was very familiar with evidence. So I felt like I really had a good concept of how that unit functioned. And then when I got the unit, I realized that I didn't have a concept of how that unit functioned actually at all. And there were a lot more details that I didn't know. Did you find that to be true when you took over the latent unit?
yeah, I was under the basic understanding, hey, they get the latent prints that we collect. They say they're of value or not. They put them in APHIS and a name pops up, sort of like a lot of people think everything in forensics work. It happens quick. It's on the screen. Here's a name. Wrap your case up. Let's go home. I didn't realize how much work goes into just evaluating the prints and figuring out whether they are or not of value. I didn't realize how many responses they got when they entered their prints into APHIS, and how sometimes it should be in the top 5 results, but other times you get these ones and they look good. They end up, plotting out their different points, and they're not the identification. I'm still learning not to call it a match, but an identification that it looks like to a layperson like me. So yeah, there was a ton of stuff that they were doing, comparing 10 prints for the state attorney's office. They do some 10 print work as well. I didn't even know they did that until I became their supervisor. So a lot of things that I had to sit down and learn and get a handle on before I felt like I could manage or supervise that unit.
So for the other supervisors out there who have taken on units they're unfamiliar with, what are some suggestions that you would give them for getting up to speed as quickly as humanly possible? Because it is kind of imperative that we get up to speed pretty rapidly when we have a new unit like that.
Yeah, totally agree. So I was fortunate / unfortunate when I came back. I said I have a 7-month-old. I came back from FMLA, and I was in what I called to my supervisors, supervisor purgatory. So I was in my office doing the job, but I didn't actually have the title. So I said, hey, if that's the case, that's fine. I'm going to sit in this latent unit as long as I can, and I'm just going to learn. So the one thing I would say is get in that unit, and it may sound edgy, be quiet. Do nothing, say nothing, just observe, listen, watch, listen to them talk to one another, listen to them talk about their cases. Sit, nearby, have them, if they're comfortable, talk on speakerphone when they're talking to deputies, detectives, the state attorney's office, etc. I just was essentially the fly on the wall for at least 2 or 3 weeks. I understand not everybody will have the ability to do that, but I was fortunate to have that ability. So I sat around, I watched them, I went with them to pick up their latents, to evaluate their latents. I watched them enter them into APHIS and loop their print. I would ask questions here and there. Why aren't you putting that in the print? And they would explain. There's a lot of noise there, a lot of mess that you don't want to add in there. And it will create, if you put junk in, you're going to get junk out. The biggest thing I did, like I said, to recap, just do nothing. Be quiet, listen, watch, observe, gather the terminology, understand what they're doing every day. And this also helped me figure out not only their workflow, but what was impeding their workflow and the little speed bumps they run into. And this job that I got was completely new. So I'm the first forensic lab supervisor at the Marion County Sheriff's Office. So they never had anybody to sit with them and figure out what holds them up. They had the forensic unit director who was very much overburdened and swamped with work, which is why they added the new position. So I was able to sit in there and figure out what was stopping them from accomplishing their goals or slowing them down or getting in their way. And eventually you get an idea of the workflow. I still can't do latent print examination. I'm still learning to this day, but I have a far better understanding now than I did 3 months ago by just hanging out, following them around, going to the jail with them to collect prints from inmates, things like that.
I love that. So 2 things you said that I want to touch on. So one of the things where he was talking about just going in and observing the unit. I have also done something similar where I've literally just moved my desk into that space and instead of sitting in my separate office so that I can observe what they're doing, and even like asking to be included on all of the emails that they send out just so that I can see the workflow that's going back and forth. Like I'm not replying to them. I'm not having any part in that. I'm just being part of that messaging process that's going back and forth. I also do a lot of what he does where I will observe what they're doing and ask them why they do certain things so that I can have a concept and understanding of their different processes. So I love that. I think that when you get a new unit, it can be very overwhelming. And a lot of people, there might even be people here who are like, ain't nobody got time for that, to go take time and go sit and do that. But you also don't have time to not do that because the unit that you don't know anything about can really pull a fast one on you if you're not sure how they function.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I was lucky to have that extra time, but I agree. You can't afford not to because you have to figure out what they're doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it. And like I said, I think the biggest thing so far for me has been what's been holding them up. So yeah, I think spending that time in there was crucial. I didn't move my desk in there, but I did add myself to the latent unit group email. And I told them, hey, anything you're sending out, CC the latent unit group email. That was one thing that they weren't doing before, was they were sort of handling matters on their own and doing it fine. But that was one thing I implemented was everybody should be in the know just in case you get sick one day, just in case you're out and about and you can't make it back for some reason from court in time and somebody shows up to get their prints rolled or something like that. So yeah, I added myself to the latent unit email. That way I'm in the loop with everything that's going on. And so, sort of like you, I read it, I delete it most of the time because they're great at what they do. I don't need to micromanage them, but it's good to keep myself engaged with their communications. That way I can see if something is coming up or there is a problem arising.
I love that. And then the second thing that you mentioned that I think is really good to talk about is while he was observing, he was noticing their problem areas, bottlenecks that they had, things that were causing some friction in their workflow, stuff like that. And when you get a new unit, I think a new unit's always hesitant about a new supervisor. Like they want to know what's going to happen, what's going to change, are they going to support me, these kinds of things. And a lot of times as a new supervisor, if you really can understand their workflow and you can fix things for them, small things that, maybe have been a problem for them for a long time, and you can make small tweaks to their workflow that makes life easier for them. I think that it really buys you a lot of respect and you get a lot more buy-in from that team because they see like, okay, they're not coming in here and changing crazy things, but they are making these small tweaks that are just making our life easier. And it kind of makes that new flow for you and the team just an easier, better flow. Would you say that you've noticed some of that as well?
Hey, it's Ashley from Gap Science, and I had to hop on here and tell you something super important. I wanted to let all of our forensic friends know that we have something huge coming your way this September. But first, what we need to know is, do you currently feel stretched very thin? Feel like you don't have all the resources that you need, not just to do your job, but do your job well? Or like you're constantly being asked to do more with less? If this sounds like you, first, you are not alone. There are so many forensic units across the nation, worldwide, that are in the same boat. But most importantly, you are not out of options. We have created the Forensics on a Budget Summit just for you. This is a virtual event. You can think of it like a virtual conference, but better, made just for forensic professionals at law enforcement agencies on small or tight budgets. Now, this is not for forensic units that are fully equipped with all of the fancy equipment and have an ample amount of people on their team. We are talking specifically to those that are working with the bare minimum or maybe even less than that. You'll hear from over 20 experts over a span of 4 days, sharing real practical strategies to get the most out of your budget. Everything from creative funding options to training hacks to tools to advocate for your unit and systems you can actually implement even when the answer is usually no. If this sounds good to you, I want you to head to www.forensicsonabudget.com. That's forensicsonabudget.com. And if you're listening to this before registration opens in September, then you will be joining our VIP waitlist and you will be the first to know when the free tickets are available. And if you're listening to this and the registration is already live, don't wait. Grab your free ticket. Yes, I said free, and join us in September for this one-of-a-kind summit built just for you. We are so excited and can't wait to see you there.
I think that it really buys you a lot of respect and you get a lot more buy-in from that team because they see like, okay, they're not coming in here and changing crazy things, but they are making these small tweaks that are just making our life easier. And it kind of makes that new flow for you and the team just an easier, better flow. Would you say that you've noticed some of that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I noticed right away was they were using some outdated equipment and program. The program that is collecting the prints at the jail, I think was made in like 2007. And I said, whoa. 2007 is ridiculous. Like, find me a car, find me a gun, find me a computer in this agency from 2007. I challenge you to do that. And then they realized like, oh yeah, that is crazy. It's like, so we haven't updated the program yet, but it's on my radar. I brought it up to the supervision and said, we need to get moving forward with this. In fact, I'm going to the IDEMIA conference in September to learn about these products that IDEMIA has that can maybe help speed up their workflow and help us get into things like maybe a local print database that they can search for quicker results rather than waiting for APHIS to come back. So being in there was probably scary for them at first. They have a real direct supervisor now, and they haven't had that for a while. But I think by me going just to learn and figure out what they do, I think they respected that, and it spoke to them and meant that like, okay, we've got somebody here who's actually on our team, not here to just boss us around and point a finger.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all feel the same. You guys can drop it in the chat box, but a lot of the frustration that we hear in our classes is that our chain of commands have no idea what we do. Well, we shouldn't be the same with our people, right? If that's a frustration of ours, that our chain of command has no idea what forensics does, the latent print unit, evidence unit, none of that stuff, and we are managing multiple units, we should also know what they do and stop in and say hello, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really spoke to them, and that was a good way to accept me as their supervisor. And so far, again, it's very early on. I'm not the expert, but it's been smooth sailing, and I feel like I really have them engaged. And I feel like a big part of that was me just sitting in there for that month and saying, all right, everything you do, I'm following you. So I'd follow one examiner for a week, follow the next examiner for a week, and then the next one for a week. And then certain things I didn't get to see. So once after 3 weeks, we have 3 examiners. But then I would pick and choose where, well, you're going over here, you're going to testify today? Okay, well, I'm going to come sit down and watch you, not to micromanage you, not to tell you you're doing it wrong, but I want to know what you deal with in court. I want to know what you deal with when you go to the jail to collect prints and things of that nature.
That's awesome. So you've already talked a little bit about how you kind of figure out the workflow and their work processes. When you're taking on a brand new unit, what are some of the things that you can do to actually determine how the individuals inside the unit are actually functioning and performing, not just the overall work process, but their actual individual productivity?
Yeah, one of the first thing I did was I got access to their stat sheet. They have a combined stat sheet, which I think they actually borrowed from you.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And I looked at it and tried to see, how many, obviously everybody's numbers are going to be different every month. We're not going to have equal amount of APHIS entries, equal amount of identifications, et cetera. But tried to see if everybody was pretty similar on a consistent basis. I went back in certain months and they were. One of the things that was coming up, which is not sort of what you asked, but they were keeping stats differently because there was never anybody, the supervisor say, all right, check out stats this month. Looks good, send it off. So I had to gather them together and say, hey, look, we need to keep stats uniformly because it makes it look like somebody's not doing enough work or somebody's doing too much work, et cetera. And that's not the case. They're all doing good work. One of the things I did that I thought was really good was I did individual meetings with everybody that I supervised as I became a supervisor. It took probably 2 or 3 weeks to get them all done, just everybody's conflicting schedules, vacations, etc. But I think that worked out really well. I wrote out a separate set of questions for everybody in the unit. Obviously, everybody within the latent unit had a certain set of core questions, but some of them have kids, some of them are newly married, so I'd ask that. And I think bringing them into my office and making it very casual. I left I have a TV back there. I left some casual music on the TV. We had coffee. And we just sort of talked for a while and got an idea of how are you doing? What do you like about your unit? What do you like about the agency? What do you dislike about your unit? How can we fix it? How are your coworkers doing? And I struggle with this because I was I don't want to make my people sort of tattletale on each other. But I had to remind myself that my job here is to make sure the unit is running as smoothly and cohesively as possible while providing the best results. So I think it was good to get everybody in individually, get their ideas. Some of them voice frustrations with things that have been going on, such as, like you said, well, we've never had a supervisor who cared what we do. Our supervisor cared, but he was inundated with work and some things fall through the cracks. There were some complaints about other members of unit and they're doing this and they're doing that. So it gave me an opportunity to isolate these things and sort of watch for them, observe them, and find ways to fix them. So I think an individual meeting with everybody, again, it's time consuming. It takes a lot of time because I wrote out separate, probably 2 pages worth of questions for everybody. But it really allowed them to open up and speak freely to me. I think it helped because, like I said, I worked with most of these people before. We were already friends. We had a good working relationship. I think it really gave me an opportunity to hear the truth about how people feel about things and give me some areas to hone in and fix for these people. So
I love that. I think the individual meetings is such a great idea. It's a great way for them to get to know you and you get to know them. And I think as supervisors, we have a lot of people come to us and complain about things all the time, and we have to filter that information. But the fact that that information is flowing to you at all is really important, So I think the fact that you're opening the door for your people to vent some things to you about some of their frustrations, and you may do something about those things or you might not, but at least they're seeing that you're open and receptive to that, which is awesome. And I do want to mention about the stats. If you're using our stat log, I'm sure we've shared it with many of you guys. So some of you guys might be using our stat log as well. And I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, the stat logs are ridiculous, because they're massive and we keep track of a lot of stats. But it is super beneficial to be able to see how the individual people are performing. But another thing that, like Chris had mentioned, is he's already looking at trying to adjust some of their bottlenecks, trying to update their software and things like that. And you can't do that stuff without numbers, So sometimes you'll get a unit where stats haven't been tracked or they've been tracked really poorly, and you can't justify anything for them. So some of the new units that I've received, that's one of the first things I've implemented is okay, the stats we were tracking aren't benefiting us in any way. So let's start tracking some numbers so we can get new software, new equipment, more people, whatever it is that you need. So I love that he talked about, getting in the stats, making sure that they're doing it in a cohesive way, since obviously they're all doing it a little bit differently. But that's such a valuable thing to understand, not only how the unit's functioning and everybody's productivity, but also to use those numbers to help that unit grow and change over time. So once you have started kind of digging into the unit, understanding their workflow, understanding how each of the different people function, if you have noticed some productivity or efficiency issues on your team, what are some things that supervisors can do to kind of go about making those changes while still keeping their team on board and getting their team to buy in to a new supervisor making changes in the unit?
Yeah, one of the things I told myself I needed to do, and I have done, is I've implemented change slowly. So I've got a list of things within just the latent unit, other units as well, but this is the new unit that I'm supervising, that I want to either change, address, or at least discuss with them. Maybe they won't be changed, but I'm taking it little by little. For example, what I just did was they were sort of managing themselves. So they had different report structures and they all had the same information in the reports, but the reports were all worded differently and titled differently. So I said, we have to get this uniform. It needs to look better when it's going out to the agency and to attorneys and the public, et cetera. So that's the first thing I did was I changed the report structure. Once I got done with that, I left it alone for a while. And I tried to sort of, for lack of a better term, compliment sandwich their change. So when I changed something, I looked to help them in some way. So one of the things I did was we went to Volusia County. They were kind enough to have us over for a day. They were using the storm system for my DME. I said, hey, you guys are using this outdated system. Let's go look at something new. Let's get prices. Let's see how they like it. Let's develop a plan to come back and discuss whether you like it or want it, or we should look at something else. And if you do like it, let's push it to the supervisors. Ultimately, we decided against it because of the new latent system we're getting this fall from FDLE. But I think they realize like change can be scary to anybody and most everybody, but he's also here to help us move forward. So I think balancing those two really helps. Another thing I did, I noticed they don't have take-home cars, or our latent examiners don't, but they do a lot of stuff like going to the courthouse or going to other agencies for verification or help or training. And I said, you shouldn't be doing that in your own cars. You know, our agency policy is you shouldn't be conducting agency business in your own vehicle. Not only that, I worry, let's say they take some latents over to Ocala Police, for example, to get a verification or something one day, and they drop a latent between the seat. You know, they sit on the seat and it drops between the seats there and it's not there forever. And all of a sudden somebody goes look for it and finds it in their car. That's going to be bad for them. So something as simple as calling the garage saying, hey, give me a car, whatever you've got's fine. Just something they can drive, not use their own gas, and feel appreciated, to be honest. For me personally, I want them to feel appreciated. So they got them an old patrol car, they debadged it, took the decals off, and they were ecstatic about that. They felt like somebody's advocating for us, somebody's looking out for us. So every time I make a change, I try to find something to give them to make sure they know, like, I'm on your team, I appreciate you guys, and I'm going to find something to help you out as well. Obviously, it won't be like that forever. I know that I can't always get them a new car, or we can't always go look at a new system. But I think especially in the early days when they're getting used to having a direct supervisor, being able to buffer the changes in the abrupt change in direction helps them accept it.
That's amazing. Those are great nuggets, Chris. Do you have any last thoughts for our supervisors that are joining us today that might be inheriting a new unit or have recently inherited a new unit?
The last thing I would say is, and this doesn't apply to everybody, and my boss sometimes reminds me, your supervisors don't have to explain everything, but I like to explain why. I'm a why person, probably why I like science, why I studied biology, why I'm where I'm at today. So I explain the why. So when I say, hey, I don't like this report, these reports don't match, let's get them looking right, let's get them fixed up here. I explain why, because, and I say, look, I'm not a latent examiner. So when I read these, they're a bit confusing, especially because you have one report that sounds this way and you have one report that sounds this way. I know they're saying the same thing, but our deputies, our detectives, and even some of our state attorneys won't know that. So I give them the why. This is why I'm changing that. This is why I don't like it. This is why I want to change it to this. And I think that helps them accept, like, okay, he doesn't just think like, well, this is stupid, move on, we're doing it my way. I'm going to explain to you my reasoning for the change. And I think that helps them absorb it a little bit better. And lastly, I think showing that you care and being personable. With some advice from my supervisor, our assistant forensic unit director, she told me to take a day. You got 5 days here a week. Take one day and go to each of your units, and you may be there for 5 minutes, or you may be there an hour, and just say, hey, how are you guys doing? What's going on? How are the kids? How are the dogs? How's your new house? How do you like that new car that you just got? Or even if it's bad, how's your family member doing? Are they getting better? Are you feeling better? And I feel like that is sort of taken down that wall of, here comes a supervisor in my office, and every time he comes, it's to make a change, or it's something bad, or he's in a bad mood. And I'll do that once. So Wednesday is my firearms day, Thursday is my DNA day, and Friday is my latent day. And I go to those offices and I pop in just at a random time whenever I have time, even if it's at 4:30, and say, hey, what's up? How you guys doing? What are you working on? Can I help you with anything? Can I get you anything? Do you have any beefs you need to take up with me? And most of the time it's no. But I think that's helped everybody accept the new supervisor and realize that, like, I'm on your team. I'm here to advocate for you. My goal isn't to come here and poke at you guys and move you around and make you, be little puppets that I want you to be. I just want everybody to succeed. I've been in this unit for 12 years. It means something to me. I helped build several of the units that we were in and move them to where they are today. So I'm on your team. I hope you trust me, and I hope that you see me as a supervisor first, but also a friend when I don't have to be a supervisor.
I love that. That's amazing. All right, guys. So Chris, if they would like to reach out to you with any questions or anything like that, where can they find you?
You can find me via email at cdecker, CDECKER, at marionso.com, Marion Sheriff's Office. Feel free to reach out. I don't have all the answers. I'm still learning myself, but I am absolutely willing to help or just talk with anybody who may need or want it.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was awesome having you here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And we hope you guys are having a wonderful summit, and we will see you at the next presentation. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Give it up for Chris, delivering some golden insights on how to lead outside of your forensic expertise. If you're hungry for more, the entire 2024 summit is now inside the vault, along with 2 more years worth of killer content, all for just $29 a month. Just click the link below. And just a reminder, this episode is part of our Countdown to the Forensics on a Budget Summit. It's coming this September, so don't forget you can grab your free ticket or join the VIP waitlist at forensicsonabudget.com. That's forensicsonabudget.com. We'll see you there.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to Forensics Unfiltered. If you liked this episode, would you do us a favor and leave a review letting us know specifically what you liked about this topic? It will only take a minute, but it will really help us plan future episodes so we can bring you more topics that you want to listen to. We'll be sure to provide any links from today's episode in our show notes on our website. Head to www.gapscience.com. Until next time, stay safe out there.